If you're at an early stage startup, you're in the right place. We should be able to get our startups over the hump and without guessing or throwing spaghetti. Marketing is an important part of your go-to-market strategy, but you need to understand the why behind the what in order to get clarity, make the right decisions, and get results. Welcome to Season 4, where I'll be asking why in order to help bring more clarity to the messy world of early stage startup marketing. Ryan, how are you? Welcome to the Modern Startup Marketing Podcast. Excited to have you on here. Let me give a brief overview of Ryan. Ryan Staley is the founder and CEO of Whale Boss. So he does sales consulting and also is a guru regarding sales AI. And that is in particular why I wanted you to come onto the show. Helping chief revenue officers and sales professionals leverage AI to work 10 hours less weekly and 2x performance. I mean, who doesn't want that? To work less and to get double the performance. And we'll get into it, but you're also the host of the Scale Up Show. So, Ryan, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time and being here.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the warm introduction. And yeah, excited. This will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I actually wanted to bring you on after hearing you present for an AI session. This was back in February. And I was like, I need to talk about AI a bit more on the show. I know people are going to get value from this. And just like having an inside look at how folks are using AI to do exactly this, like work less and 2x performance, for example. And then the other thing is like this year, I just launched what I'm calling an embedded growth team. So I'm not just doing fractional head of marketing stuff, but there's now a way to work with startups on their growth efforts, which was actually pretty difficult to do in years prior. But now it's still fractional, but now because we're leveraging, it's just a couple other people that I work with, leveraging AI tools, we're able to execute on the marketing strategy. That's really helpful. Yeah, it's kind of like an embedded growth team. I think that's a good explanation of what sort of work this is. So let's just start simple. What AI tools are you using?
Okay. And I'll be like, specific. And a couple of points too. It's funny because like I focus on AI skill transformation for revenue teams. And it's interesting because even though I started on the CRO side, it's now expanded into go-to-market, whether it be RevOps or marketing as well. And the funny thing is I have tons of marketing use cases that I use for my own personal business as well. So if we need to get into that or you want to get into that, we could definitely hit that too for your audience.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I do actually. And I will take note of that. I want to talk about sales and I want to talk about marketing because there are different use cases where you can use the tools in different ways. So I'd love that.
Okay, cool. And to answer your original question, the tools that I use, and when I say AI, like I kind of put AI into two buckets right now. There's like the product technical side where you're integrating into large data sets at scale. That's more like complicated systems where you need to have like a very deep level of expertise in terms of infrastructure, systems engineering, things like that. I'm not talking about that side. I'm talking about non-technical users or core non-technical users. And that could be any part of the business, specifically how to integrate that into what they're doing to become superhuman. And so the tools that I love to use are, I pay for the ChatGPT teams for my organization, right? I also have Copilot is another one that I've been testing. I also basically purchased it because I'm using it for clients as well and helping them understand how to use it because GPT is under the hood. Other tools outside of that, for on the marketing side, I love Cast Magic, which is a great tool for situations like this where you have a recording, a presentation, and then you can repurpose it into a lot of multiple types of content. And then last but not least is another tool that comes to mind, actually two other ones, TextBlaze, which I use for a prompt library, which is like a text expander. And then the last one is Video AI, which helps us repurpose videos in a tight format for shorts. So that's kind of the stack right now that I mostly focus on. I also use Claude and Gemini a little bit too, but those are the core, I think, 5 that I would focus on.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's get a little bit into like some use cases.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the use cases that are bringing the biggest value. There's like some things that are like, yeah, maybe you saved an hour or something, but then there are some that are like, oh my gosh, this has changed the game, right? So, for example, for me, once Riverside brought in their video clips AI stuff, right? Like, there are certain things that just change the game and make certain workloads just way less difficult. And also things that you never thought you would do, right? Because I actually was paying a videographer to create clips for me only a couple years ago, right? And
Mhm.
it was like $70 per clip. And so now you don't need to do that anymore. And now the tool does it for you. And it's like in a minute, a click of a button, and you get these video clips if you want, right? So, what would you say is like the biggest value use cases that you have seen or your clients have seen from using AI tools? And let's just get into like specifics on that.
Yeah, no problem. And we could hit on both sides of the house, both the sales and the marketing side. And so
Yeah.
I think like kind of the way to look at it is most people just look at it as a productivity enhancer. It helps me write emails, it helps me do this, which I think is a massive, I don't want to say misappropriation. Sounds like a big word. I don't even know where that came from because I don't use that word at all. So, but I just think it's not accurate. And so let's break it out in a couple buckets. We effectively have time, we have strategic thinking, and then there's more generative AI, right? So those are kind of like the core areas. And so if you break it down, it's quality, quantity, and speed, right? And so if we look at let's say the time side, I think there's kind of two areas, and I can give specific examples. There's like energy vampires and time piranhas that everybody has with what they do and their day-to-day job, right? So on the sales side, for example, there's close to, I think it's like 72% of time associated with selling is based on non-selling activities, research, prep, follow-ups, admin tasks, all that, right? So effectively what you could do is you could cut that in half and basically reallocate that time to spending twice as much time either with customers or doing activities related to them. And that could be emotionally connecting with them. That could be doing deeper strategic work. So you don't have to do all the tactical crap. And one of the ways that I think of it is kind of like, are you familiar with, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but do you understand like, or have you really thought about it? You probably haven't, maybe you have, but the impact on like what happened when the Model T was created. Have you seen any of the stats on that at all? I'm like a little bit of a nerd when it comes to this stuff, so that's
Oh,
why I'm
wow.
asking.
You're taking me that far back. I mean, when the Model T was created, it completely changed the game on how people were traveling, right? Because before they would use the horse and buggy and horse and carriage. And I don't know if I'm missing something that's like super
Yeah, I'll get
obvious,
to it.
but
I didn't lead
yeah.
you. I didn't give you a good question, really. So part of that's on me. So effectively, look at
Yeah.
it this way: there's like the craftsman, and when they first started building them, they had one person build an entire car. So that took close to 16 and a half hours, and they made about 10,000 a year. It cost $850 as well. So what happened is then they just made a simple switch to the assembly line,
Right.
and so they had one person doing each part of the car, right? And so that brought the car cost down to like 200 to 250 to $350. Went from 16 hours to basically an hour and like 15 minutes or something like that. And they made millions a year. So effectively, I love that analogy because I think white collar work, a lot of people are still in the craftsman role where they're doing all these different areas that aren't even in their core skill set. And so what I'm thinking you could do is leverage AI to carve out a lot of those pieces. And basically, it's like the assembly line for you, like the automated assembly line or the AI assembly line. And so if we're talking other specific use cases, those are more on like the tactical pieces that I talked about. Then there's more like deep work process that I think of, okay, when we talk about time. And so that could be creating OKRs for a team. Let's say you want to create a new marketing team, a new sales team. You could effectively create the outcomes, identify the outcomes that you want, then break it down one layer further, get KPIs and OKRs for them. Then, take it one level deeper and get a management program for them in terms of meeting schedules, evaluations, all those. Then you take it one step further, create a tech stack from it, and then take it one step even further,
Mm.
and then basically create a job description for the people you need to hire. So that would have taken a really long time to do in the past, maybe 8 hours or more if you're good. You could effectively do it in like 20 minutes now, and then editing.
That was your whole post on LinkedIn. That was like how to use ChatGPT to build an entire go to market in less than 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's an example. Well, this one
Yeah.
was on the sales team. The go to market
Yeah.
team was effectively more around like everything from like identifying a product to like what your strengths are as a founder for a go to market motion versus like who you should hire to support that. And then who's your co founder you should hire. So I get in a lot of that more on the go to market side. So
So
similar
how do you
example.
approach? Yeah, I'm just curious, how do you approach, let's say you're building a company and you want to understand at the highest level, what are the OKRs that you need? What are the objectives? What are the goals you need to hit for marketing team versus sales team versus other teams? What are the prompts you're using? How do you make it helpful without much information?
Yeah, without giving examples. So, like, I think the best way to do that is you have to give it context on effectively your situation. And then you have to tell the AI who you want it to be. And so, let me break that down or double click on those two areas. So, your organization, so you could say, okay, I need to build a marketing org. I'm a startup, right? That's one piece. We have zero revenue. We're bootstrapped. Our product is roughly going to be this cost. It's going to be product led growth or more of a higher ACV deal. And this is the timeline and this is the result I want. So basically, you're giving it all the context about who you are and what you want. And then what you could do is you could leverage it the other way of you could give it a role of like, okay, I want you to be a startup advisor. I want you to be Sam Altman from who was previously at Y Combinator. Give me his perspective on how to create those results for a startup in Y Combinator, but make them bootstrap, right? Something like that. So you could go individual. You could do a role like an advisor that has 10 years experience doing that. And then the other thing that you could do is instead of just using the person, you could also identify like a well-known framework as well. So those are kind of like three areas that you could leverage. And when I say framework, I mean methodology or best practice or anything like that, right?
Yeah,
So if you
totally.
combine those together, that's when you start to get really powerful data back because like the whole model is based on attention. So you got to tell it where to focus this attention so that it extracts the right data for you.
Okay, so then it spits out an answer for you,
Mhm.
but you still need to kind of like, let's say you asked it for OKRs and then it gives it to you, and like mathematically, like that makes sense, right? But you still need to have some sense of like, are we shooting for the stars here? Is this actually achievable given the industry I'm in, given the competition here, given like you have to double check on that, right? I mean, what do you recommend to do with the answer it gives you? Because even if you ask for, like, can you give me a marketing strategy? This is my startup. This is the product I'm selling. This is what I'm pricing it at. This is the competition out there. Act like Sam Altman, whoever, right? And it spits something back at you. What's the best way to then take that information? And I don't think you can just run with it as it gives it to you, right? You need to have a little bit more understanding, and hopefully you do as a founder of a startup or somebody like a marketer that's trying to put a marketing strategy together. You need to know what you're doing. You can't just take it
Mhm.
as it stands, right? And you need to kind of tweak it for your own purposes.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. And so I think like before it used to get you 90% of the way there, right? If you do really good prompting. I think with the new ChatGPT 4.0, I think it'll get you 95% of the way there with really good prompting. But like if you're in the situation, let's say it's your first time doing it, you don't know what you don't know, right? Let's put it that way, right? One of the
Right.
things that I use after it gives out the example is like, let's say I put all that in, this is my situation, this is what I want to do, act like this person, and it spits out a result. Then, like, if it was something that I didn't know, I would say, okay, like a couple ways where you could double check that. Give me 3 or 5 examples of companies that have successfully implemented this strategy and break down like tactically exactly what they did. So then you have like real world examples to pull from. And then you could also say, ask it to cite its sources as well. And then it'll break down links, is what it's starting to do. I'm seeing another tool I forgot to mention that's really good with research is Perplexity AI. So that's really good, especially for marketers. But that's what I would say is like really effective. So either someone that's done it before and achieved X result, similar or greater result than you want. And then, cite the sources are probably some of the best examples, I would say.
I
And
love it.
here's the other
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
ask it exactly what you asked me. Like, hey, are you sure this is right? Like, I'm a little concerned because we're in a high inflationary market right now and the cost of capital is really, really high. Do you think that would work right now? Like, do exactly that. And then it'll give you feedback on that and just keep talking back and forth with it like that.
And then if you want, and it gives you examples of companies that have used that model, you can bring them on your podcast if you have them and dig deeper and like find out the nuances, right? Because there's only so much that the information that it will give you will only cover so much, right? You need to go back and you can actually talk to people if you want to find out deeper insights. That's cool. So that's a great use case or a couple of use cases for maybe for like sales people and creating an atmosphere of like the working less and doubling performance. What's a specific really high value use case for sales? And then maybe we can talk about marketing, because I think we were talking more about from a founder's perspective, it would be cool to use some of these prompts. But what have you found is like really valuable from a sales perspective? Like, can we get more specific? You did talk about how they should be spending time with customers or with prospects or, you know, in person or going to conferences or doing events or whatever it is, right? Building relationships versus 70% of what they do, the AI can take over. So what's like a good example of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let's say I got a meeting with, and this is like one of many examples, but you can apply it along the entire sales process. Let's say I have an introductory meeting and it took me 3 months to get an appointment with this Fortune 500 company, right? Well, one of the best strategies that you can leverage is effectively looking at the annual report, looking at the letter from the CEO and their top 5 strategic objectives, then looking at their most recent earnings report, finding out the 10K critical risks that are in there. And then on top of it, too, trends and patterns and opportunities and key focus areas that they have. Because that's something that basically will separate you from 90% of sellers. And this is what I've seen for Fortune 5. I actually had like a director of senior sourcing at Lowe's Home Improvement tell me that. And he had a $60 million budget, right, for cost savings alone, not even his budget that he had. So he's like, if you do that, you will basically differentiate yourself versus 90% of every other salesperson that walks in there. So there's the ability to leverage that and get all that data with one prompt. Like if you were to do it the old way, it would take like 35, 40 minutes and you would have varying levels of results depending on who was actually doing the research because it'd be very manual. Now you could do it like in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So that's one example. And another one that I love, and then there's a marketing one that I love, or actually marketing, product, and sales. It's the trifecta, if you will. You know, one of the things that comes up often too, and this is more on the strategic thinking side, but the number one reason why people don't make decisions today or buy is because they don't want to make a decision and they're afraid to make the wrong decision, right? So basically, you could structure it so that you reframe doing nothing as a loss to them and have it give you insights on like language and position and how to do that. And it works really well. So like that's another example too.
Have you used that for your own work? Like on your website, are you talking in like the loss language? Have you used
my website? I am in the process of like updating it because it doesn't match what I do. Because like things have been happening really fast.
Yeah.
And so that's actually one of the things that's on journey for me, but I use it in my sales conversations. So I definitely do use it. I just haven't updated the website yet or launched the new website. It's in process.
I love this idea. What tool do you recommend? Is this like a chat GPT thing? I'm just going to like assume that it is, but I don't want to assume.
It's not a tool. It's just a simple prompt, right? It's just a simple prompt. And I'll give you an example of what the prompt would look like for that. You could say, and you're going to love the next one too, if you want me to go on that 3-banger one I mentioned. But effectively what you could do is you could say, okay, I want you to basically help me reframe as a loss in this situation for the prospect I'm talking to of their basically default option is to not do anything. So I want you to help me reframe that as a loss. Give me 5 ideas on how to do that. Right. And then boom, boom, boom. It'll give you ideas on how to position it.
Cool. And you got to tell it like what you do. You got to give context. Every time you do something like that, you need to provide context of like, here's how I help my customers. Here's the product I'm building, all that stuff. And then ask it to.
Yeah. I mean, what you could do to make it simpler, if you're like more focused on one tool, specifically ChatGPT, you can put it in custom instructions. So you don't have to do that every time.
Cool.
So that'll cut a lot of time out and effort in terms of doing that.
Okay, great. Go back to you had a 3-banger something.
3-banger. Such a random thing. So, and it was funny because the CMO of HubSpot, not HubSpot, Zapier, Kieran, and I can't remember Kieran's last name. Good dude, has a podcast called Marketing Against the Grain. And one of the things he cited was like leveraging sales transcriptions for basically repurposing it for creating your own customer Grammarly, right? And so one of the things I did was I took all the conversations I had for sales calls, both wins and losses, leveraged that, and then incorporated a prompt so that I identified the most common used language, questions, and objections that were had by the people that I talked to, and effectively am using that for how I communicate, whether it be copy, which is like what I told you I'm working on. It
Yeah.
could be for sales scripts and questions, proactively covering objections, or it could be a design ideology for your product, right? So like you could hit across all three areas just by taking something that's like considered, I don't want to say waste, but transcriptions from sales calls, and then create all this strategic byproduct for your marketing, your sales, and your product. And that's one
My
of the
gosh,
things
that's brilliant. And that takes the onus off of people because we forget a lot of things, right? And then we don't use all those transcripts. So you basically like feed all the transcripts, assuming that people are recording their sales calls, right? You feed it into the tool and then give it the prompt, like analyze all of these transcripts and find out what questions do people have, what objections do people have, all that stuff. That's brilliant. I love that use case.
yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with it too. And so like I've been thinking a lot about like strategic byproducts like that you could take data that's just sitting there and all you have to do is like, and it's a little tedious. I did it when I was on a car ride and somebody else was driving. I went to like the NFL draft and it was on the way home. And so I didn't have a Zapier or anything like that set up. So I just copied it and put it in one doc and then attached the doc and then gave it a prompt and then boom, and then iterated on it. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, you don't have to organize it either. You just give it everything, right? Just like you said, you just copy paste it into a doc. It has all the information, it can go through it really fast. That's great. Was that the second? You had three, I think. Did you have three or was that three?
Yeah, well, I there's another one that I like that I think with the new updates that happened like a week and a half ago is the 4.0 model. If you leverage that, like the data analysis on it, it's amazing, both for visualization and for understanding data. I would say there's three core mistakes that people make when they're using the data analysis, which are like, oh, it's not that good. The old model, the ChatGPT 4 used to error out a lot and it would catch itself and it would correct it. It would just take a while. The new model is much better and faster. And the three things that I think people miss are one, they don't really enrich the data, which is it only like that's one problem, right? And by enrich, I mean put it in Zoom or Apollo, get like additional layers of information, like what industry vertical keywords, just stuff like that. So that's one. Another is they're trying to get information outside of what's in the doc, right? So they might have like 70% of what they need and they're like, well, why isn't it providing other insights? And it's like, because it's only looking off the data. So that's number two. And then number three is they're not giving it context. They're not telling it like, hey, I want you to act as a RevOps professional with this level of experience. And this is my goal. They're just asking it to analyze it. Right. And so
Right.
those are the things that'll like give you like 10x results versus just the normal way that most people use it.
What are some prompts that you recommend? These could be high level, right? Not so specific, but like what are some prompts when you're thinking about this data analysis type of use case? What are some good ones that you've used or clients have used?
Right. There's three contexts for it that you could use the prompts. There's like a CSV file, there's like a picture, like a screenshot, and then there's just lawn like I did with the transcription, right? Lawn form text, like a lot of text. So those are the areas. So if we're looking at a prompt, I would start simple and then I would drill down deeper. And that's when I think ChatGPT is amazing, or a lot of these tools are amazing, is when you start simple and then you go complex over time and keep drilling down. That's when you'll get stuff that's like amazing. So we're talking about a prompt, like if you're looking at your ICP, like simple thing, ideal customer profile, right? You could identify and say, like, start off as look at this information and provide me the 10 key areas for an ideal customer profile, right? So like I'll start with that. And then what I'll do is I'll segment it. So I'll be like, okay, awesome work. Now I want you to focus on the top 20% of my clients and then the bottom 80%. Create two different ICP segments for them. And then it does that. And then gives you insights on like, okay, top 20% has these three verticals, even though it's a horizontal solution that it's amazing at, versus the bottom. It gives you average deal size, like speed, all those areas, which are super critical. So those are like some examples of what you could do. And then another simple one is just like, please visualize this data, compare the data, like very simple. But like, once again, like you're going to have your own speak of like, you could even use it for keywords, like SEO keywords, or you could take a picture of answer the public and say, okay, based on these keywords, help me create content based on these trending keywords in this picture and give me 10 ideas, act as a content creator. Give me 10 ideas that I could use for YouTube videos. It does a good job at that too.
Oh my gosh. All right. This has been so helpful. And I do remember back when I heard you speak at that AI session back in February, I remember another use case, which you haven't talked about this time around, but maybe it's because there are so many other ones that are even better that you just mentioned. You talked about how you could use it as like a personal assistant too. Let's say you've got this challenge at work and maybe you don't have other folks on a team, right? Or you don't have other people to talk to about this challenge. You could literally just like tell it what the challenge is and then say, can you help me figure out how to solve this? What are like 3 approaches you would take? That in and of itself is super cool, especially for small, nimble teams and within startups, maybe like one head of marketing, right? Could do something like that. Solopreneurs can use that as well. And I thought that was really fascinating when you mentioned it back in February. But clearly, you've grown since then, and there are other way more useful use cases. But I think that one is still pretty fascinating. Have you used that before?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
like, so you could do it a couple ways. The very simple version is like, you could say, okay, I want you to, like, what am I not seeing? What are my blind spots? That's a good one. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is my result. This is the result I want. What are my blind spots and why am I not getting it? So that's one example. The other one you could use too, that's much more detailed, is ask the same kind of question, but through the lens of Elon Musk and his first principles theory. And then that way it kind of goes through that aspect of how he approaches things. And it asks some pretty good questions, like I put in there, I was testing it for a customer and showing it of a pretty large company that I was working for. And I was like, hey, the most common, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, the most common problem that any sales or marketing org has is like, well, we don't have enough opportunities. We don't have enough at bats. We don't have enough pipeline. Like that's the number one. Right. And they're like, our email marketing isn't working, let's say, for example. So I put that in there. It's like, we don't have enough pipeline due to email marketing. It's like, well, why do you think email marketing is the best way to handle this? Right. And so it starts to get real with you, which is good. And then just drill down. And then that's when you get like really exciting outputs from it.
Awesome. All right. We talked about all these benefits, and I am a big believer that there is a place for AI to lessen your workload. And hopefully, if you and the AI tool that you're using, you're taking the insights and using it and going in the right direction, it does impact performance. But there's another side to it, right? Like, I know a lot of people are still wary when it comes to using AI, especially for things like strategy, especially for things like creating really good content. And this is the stuff that I just mentioned where we have an embedded growth team using AI tools to create content. And you can do it now. And you've got to still have a lens on it where you have the knowledge as like the person reviewing things, not just taking it at whatever it spits out, then you use it. You have to have knowledge around, then you put that and put it into use, right? But for example, like I get prospects all the time. I just got off a call today with a startup that wants me to take a look at their marketing strategy. And so they present it to me, and then I come back and say, like, okay, poke some holes in it, ask some questions, given that they gave me, they could do this with an AI tool too. They can dump all this information, say, here's a marketing strategy, chat GPT, act like you're Elon Musk. What do you think? Right. And then it tells you, okay, so here's what I think about your strategy. And I'm just trying to think through the pitfalls that can occur here when you're a founder of a startup and you don't go to a fractional head of marketing, or you don't want to hire a marketer at all, or you don't want to hire a salesperson. You just want to use the tool and have it tell you what to do and give you copy to write those cold emails. What I want to know, Ryan, is your thoughts around like, what are you still weary about when it comes to using these tools? Where have you seen things kind of get a little bit rotten and there were good intentions, but it ended up being falling short?
Yeah.
Anything that you recommend or have seen or are wary about?
I would say it's more overarching. So like I think like part of the reason why ChatGPT made their model 4 version free is because they want the data. They want the training data, right, on how people are using it. That's why I pay for upgraded licenses, because there's commercial data protection around that and it's guaranteed. And so personally, I feel a lot more comfortable about that. So that's more like the consumer side, right? Like that's
Right.
you as a person or a company. I wouldn't use the data analysis tool without having that. I didn't previously, and then once it had that, I would pay for it just on that alone. So that's one. And then the other side of it's more overall safety. And I don't know. This as of time of recording. The Ilya, I think Sutskever was one of the chief researcher, one of the co-founders at OpenAI. He just left. He was supposed to be in charge of their safety team. There's another person that left, Jan. I don't know how to pronounce the person's last name. Was like the number 2. That person left, and then somebody else left
So
because
something's going on.
yeah, I
That's,
mean
yeah,
something's not right about that with the security. Either they're not focusing on it, and when I say security, I'm talking more like bigger picture, like runaway truck scenarios. In my opinion, I don't have any like specific data from OpenAI. This is from all the like an aggregation of everything I'm reading. So I think that's something that as a whole society we got to be careful of. The good thing though, I would like is like Microsoft has 49% ownership. I think they're on the board now, but they have expanded influence, and Microsoft is psycho in a good way about security and things like that. So I think that's a good kind of check and balance that they have, based on they have so much to lose if they fail, right? So or they mess up in that area. So I think they have a big target on their back as well. So I think that's something that helps me kind of round that out. But it's something definitely we all have to be careful of, because I know what's going to happen once agents are going to be released. Some really weird stuff's going to start happening, and it's going to open up a lot of people's eyes. That's just kind of my prediction.
What are you thinking? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Microsoft goes under.
Well, I'm just saying autonomous agents, like a higher
Yeah.
level of autonomous agents. So a smarter model, but then it's autonomous. It's kind of like here's a good example. I didn't really think of this. It's like when autopilot for Tesla came out, and people are just like, oh yeah, that's cool. And people are taking naps in their car driving, and then people are getting in accidents. It wasn't
Right.
totally autopilot. It was probably like with AI, it was probably 85-90% of the way there, right? And so I'm concerned that people are going to hit the lazy button and do that with something that could create, like it could destroy a brand or leak a lot of customer data or something like that. I don't know exactly what, but that's what I think is going to happen. And it's going to take a situation like that for everybody to look at things a little more serious
Yeah.
on the government side, in my opinion.
Totally. I could see that. When you say that AI gets you, let's say 85, 90% of the way there, that's where I am wary too. And I will remain wary, where you can get really cool information and you can get it back in, minutes, seconds versus hours, days. But it's what you do with that information. What's where you take it next. Do you scrutinize it? Do you come back with another prompt, to help avoid just fully trusting what you're
Mm-hmm.
getting back? And that's where you need the person. You can't, and that's the same thing, right? You
Totally
can't
agree.
fully trust that autonomous vehicle. You can't just take a nap and fully trust, because it's 85, 90% of the way there. So I think that's the same thing
Yeah.
of where I'm wary of some of these tools and how people are using them. And I'm getting like cold messages on LinkedIn where I'm like, this is clearly a robot. This is clear as day, clear as night, even. Why are you doing this? Why are you sending me this? This sounds like a robot. And that they're crashing and burning in that autonomous vehicle because they're
Yep.
hoping it'll get them 100% of the way there, and it won't.
Yep. Totally. They're scaling shit, basically.
Exactly. So there's that. But I really, the use cases that you shared, really cool. You got to update your website now with.
It's something that's like, and here's the thing, like I'm helping companies implement this like on the ground floor. So like I'm learning new stuff every day. But yeah, as a marketing person, I would say that, I give myself like a D- right now with my website versus where I need to be, but it'll get corrected soon.
Is there anything you wish that you could get done now that there still isn't the ability to do it, or that's not something that you've thought of? Because
For the website or what? Or just in
no,
general?
no, just from using from the use cases, right? Using these AI
Oh,
tools. Yeah.
yeah, I think and this is stuff like, so I've experimented with the different models in terms of like what I wish it could use. There's a lot of things. I wish like I could interconnect different LLMs right now without a massive technical lift. Or actually I should say, let me take it. Here's a use case that's really good. I wish that I could code and create applications based on use cases without knowing how to code, right? Which is, it's starting to get there. It's heading in that direction. And there's some capabilities to do that actually. Somebody just created a Chrome extension in 5 hours just by using ChatGPT the other day.
But was
So,
it a developer that knew how to
no,
code?
it wasn't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I imagine he asked it like how to do it. What are all the step-by-step processes? And then he went through and did each one.
Yeah.
And then, all the way from like debugging code and stuff like that. So there's some things like that that are probably already there that I just need to focus and spend time on if I want to, because like I have some really, really strong, obviously, understanding of the nuances of it. And I just need to like take the next step and do stuff like that.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's going to impact the engineering profession, I think, right? I mean, if
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
you don't need developers, or you may not need to go and take all those courses to be fully functional software engineer, right? Because now you've learned how to use the tool and help you get there 85-90% of the way there, right? And it's
Mhm.
okay if you're not 100% of the way there for some companies, I suppose. But that's really fascinating. So this has been great. You shared a lot of information with me, and I like to sort of wrap up episodes with just a question of like, is there anything that you want to ask me potentially and answer it?
Yeah, I think like if let me, I'll just spit back the use case you just asked me. Like, what's the number one use case that you think would be awesome to use, specifically for marketing and growing a company that you haven't been able to figure out or understand yet?
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking to the wrong person because I like to use tools that have AI built into them. I'm not like a Chat GPT power user. I'm not a Claude power user. I do have folks on my like a very small team that when it comes to content creation, they will use AI tools to create content, and they will use tools like, for example, Claude, I mentioned Perplexity, Otter, right? Some of the tools that you mentioned were really useful too, but I'm not the one that's using those tools. So when you're asking me that question, the way I come at it is like, if I needed to get something done, and maybe I do need to just play around in there a bit more, but usually I've used ChatGPT just to play around, and I've used Dolly just to play around to create images and stuff like that. But if I don't need it, which in my work, I typically don't, I guess I could make things go faster, but things kind of go fast already. If I don't need it, I'm not going to use the tool. Whereas some people are like, oh my gosh, this is a new flashy, shiny object. I must use it, right? So in my line of work, I guess I could use it to help with like marketing strategy, right? Versus my process, which, I go deep into who are the customers, get to know them, do voice of customer research. Guess I could take all the transcripts there, feed it into ChatGPT, and then spit out like, what's the positioning, what's the messaging, what's the persona profile, goals, challenges of that person. So, you know what? I might actually do that, Ryan. I think like maybe taking the work that I do and pulling in ChatGPT and to make it go faster. And then knowing that I have like that lens of, I've done this before. Does this seem a little fishy? Like this seems a little off given my conversations with the client or conversations that I've had with the customers, right? But making the work go faster could be a really interesting use case. And then from there, coming up with the marketing strategy, which, takes time, of course, and asking the tool, like, what do you think it should be? And which direction should we go in? And how do we prioritize these channels given this is the ICP we're going after? That could be really interesting. So I might take you up on that, Ryan, and try it out.
Go for it. I think you'll be surprised. Like even if I think that use case you just mentioned, take the transcription from the call, have it break down like in your framework, like what it is. And you could even processize that, create a GPT. So then basically you could just, as a default, feed it in after every one of those calls and it'll automatically do that for you.
I think I'm going to take you up on that because I've been saying like, I don't just use a tool unless I need it, right? And here could be a really good use case for where I do this work, but I could use the tool to enhance the work that I'm already doing and make it go faster. So I love it. Love that question. And I appreciate you taking the time and coming on here and sharing all these I'm sure the listener is already like thinking through how to incorporate some of these things that you shared, some of these use cases on both the sales and marketing and even founder side. So appreciate you, Ryan. Thanks for joining me. And if folks want to find Ryan, you should. He's on LinkedIn, Ryan Staley, and check out Ryan's website, but maybe not yet because you're updating it, but still, you can still go there. It's ryanstaley.io. So thanks again, Ryan.
Thanks for having me on, Anna. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this weekly episode of Modern Startup Marketing. New episodes are dropping weekly, so make sure you're following wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on LinkedIn, search for Anna Furmanov, visit my website to learn more about how I help early stage startups, go to furmanovmarketing.com, and don't forget to leave a review if you're loving the show.